Why aren't we killing these people? Because now we can't kill the protesters, but we can kill the people who gave them those orders in that foreign country. And when you have a weapon system that results in kinetic effects, there is no difference between that and a bomb. There is no difference between telling a useful idiot to go glue themselves to the side of a ship, which prevents the ship from leaving, or having a special forces team put a limpet mine on the ship that causes damage that prevents the ship from leaving. The kinetic effects are the same. The effector is the same.
Welcome to the first episode of Beyond This Week, where we speak to experts about the world's most pressing geopolitical events and make sense of the chaos. As we step into a brand new year, we're kicking things off with a bang. 2025 is here, and with it comes a world of new challenges, opportunities, and, let's be honest, plenty of global drama to unpack. But today, we're doing something special. Joining us is none other than Ryan McBeth, a name many of you know for his sharp insights, no-nonsense analysis, and deep dives into the issues that matter most. Together, we'll be looking ahead to what this year might bring, reflecting on the lessons of the past, and of course, tackling the big questions shaping our world. So, grab your coffee, your notebook, or whatever fuels your curiosity, because this is going to be a conversation you don't want to miss. Let's dive in.
Yeah, so I was listening to you and Mike Baker, which was very interesting to me, as you specifically called the months out for China, which I've kind of refrained from doing for a while for various reasons. But I've always said it's 2 points, and one in the spring, one in the fall, that can happen. And and then I heard you talk about April and October, and I was like, all right, Ryan knows. Ryan's putting it out. It's time to start talking about it in 2025. So
yeah, well, April and October are basically the 2 months when the sea state is good enough to actually do an invasion. And so the question is, can China get their capabilities up to par to be able to invade outside of those two windows, right?
Right.
So I've said that President Xi has indicated that the Chinese military must be ready to take Taiwan by force by 2027. Odds are that China will try to take Taiwan in 2028, either in April or October. The smarter bet would be October, and that's because that would be when the U.S. presidential election is going on. And, granted, President Trump can't run for a third term, but it still might make people nervous. Well, you'd have to change the Constitution, right?
Right.
And that might be a little difficult to do. And actually, there could be a real question as to whether is maybe we need 1 6-year term instead of 2 4-year terms, right? Because maybe 4 years.
A world war could kind of get us talking about that, right? Where we go, hey, maybe we just extend it a little bit. And then the other thing with these virtual things is, I'm going to try to not cut you off as much as possible. And then before we get started, just to let you know.
Oh, I thought we already started. Okay.
We're getting into it. Yeah, no. I'm recording this. Some of this will make it, some of it won't.
Got it.
But I'm just I think you and I have a very similar background, Army Intel. I did geospatial and full motion video for JSOC, and I know you've done some very similar things with other agencies and stuff like that. So this is what I tell Mike Baker all the time. When I hear you say something, and maybe it's like an echo chamber, and so I agree with it. I'm like, okay, I'm still on the right path, because at least Ryan McBeth is agreeing with my analysis. And then when you don't, I do further research, and I try to get more information.
What's crazy is I haven't done anything since April, and it's because of Israel.
Yeah,
Israel just rampaged through the Middle East. And they took my job. The Jews took my job.
Oh, no. Do not get started. Don't get started. All their lasers and
Yeah, they have been rampaging through the Middle East,
Yeah.
kinetically striking bad guys, and there's no more contract work, at least not in the
Yeah,
Middle East.
it's been crazy, with the especially like the Iranian response.
Yeah,
And so that was kind of April time frame, right? I was in New Orleans at the time visiting family, and that kind of hit, but we all knew it was coming. And I think, analysts like you and I kind of expected this is just going to be a very limited response because Iran cannot afford to start a full-blown conflict. They just need their proxies to kind of keep pushing,
yeah,
for a football term, keep pushing the football forward
yeah.
and kind of get into the red zone until they can get some more money. And Israel, really, I know a lot of accounts that I respect and follow were really saying, look, Israel's going to lose this, right? They're going about it the wrong way. And I'd like to get your opinion on some of this, but it was like Israel's going the wrong way about this. They're going scorched earth, and they're going to
Yeah.
fail in this. And
So,
that's been the opposite.
so it depends on what you mean by fail.
Hmm.
So, when I'm actually of the opinion that Israel lost the information war in 2023 on October 17th. It was 10 days
Hmm.
after the attacks. And that was when Islamic Jihad, they fired a rocket at Israel and the rocket failed and it hit the Al Arabiya hospital in Gaza. And immediately the New York Times said, Israel bombs hospital in Gaza. Now I looked at that and I knew immediately this thing wasn't an Israeli bomb. The damage wasn't quite right. It goes beyond just doing crater analysis and into like, you know, if Israel is dropping precision guided munitions, right? These things that they don't tend to fail. They can fail. GPS munitions can fail, but they don't tend to fail. And you also have to look at what do they gain by bombing a parking lot of a hospital. Now, Daddy El Batty could have been in that parking lot, right? But in a
Hmm.
case like that, they would use a small diameter bomb, a Hellfire missile. The damage wouldn't have been that great. So this has to be something else. And I did a video about this, and I found out that there's only 8 veterans who work for the New York Times, and not all of them are journalists. Like some of these dudes like work in like audio,
Hmm.
like so they don't really have any input on the creative process. And so that New York Times article came out, and I believe Israel said, you know what, we've lost world opinion, so we're just going to go and do what we need to do. We're not going to outrightly commit war crimes, but something that was an NCV of 5, well, now that's an NCV of 20. An NCV, non-combatant cutoff value, where it's the number of civilians you're allowed to kill before you have to get permission from higher to say, hey, can we drop this bomb? Right? And 99% of the time in the U.S. Army, the NCV was what? 0. Right?
Zero, right? Yeah, zero.
You can't kill any civilians. And you might once in a while see like an NCV of 5, right?
And
Like if
and look,
dad,
we had collateral damage was like a farmer's fence, and I've
yeah,
had these conversations with commanders. Hey, let's knock it right now. That's a fence. That's a farmer's fence. If we hit it, and we did hit it with a B1, and you know what we had to do? Pay that farmer $60,000 to fix their fence.
you had a
Um,
fence with a 2,000 pounder.
yeah. No, it
Jesus,
wasn't a fence. Okay, Ron. It wasn't a
I
fence.
probably would have been like,
It was a
whoa,
high
okay,
value target, but there was a fence near the high
okay,
value
yeah,
target. He had gone from a
yeah,
field in the middle of nowhere, and we didn't have any A-10s to come in, any warthogs coming in. So we needed a bomber. We got the bomber. He made it to the fence area, this kind of stone fence.
yeah.
This is not classified anymore. I can tell this. The fence was there. We absolutely destroyed. So your question being, you put that much ammunition on a fence? No, we did that much ammunition for one singular human being, and the fence was kind of collateral. But we paid the farmer 60,000 to fix the
Yeah,
fence, and there was a big international incident based
and
off of it.
sometimes that's the issue because if all you have on not on cap on oh my god, if all you have if all the only asset you have in the area is 2,000 pounders, they're probably getting a 2,000 pounder,
Yep.
right? Especially if it's a target that has a limited window. Like, Daddy El Batty is passing by the road. There's no civilians around, but there's a fence there. All right, we got to make a decision. And you call up to oh my God, what was the name of the place in not Oman? Oh God, do you call up to Doha, and
Oh
Doha
yeah,
might
yeah.
kick it up to Tampa, and then
And then that goes
they'll
up to the White
CENTCOM in
House.
Tampa, and yeah,
Yeah.
and that might go to the White House, and yes, hit the fence. Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they don't understand the targeting process like at all, like the number of layers that are involved
I think that's
in
why I
it.
appreciate your content so much, because you do understand it. You understand the targeting aspects. And look, I haven't done a bunch of research into
Yeah.
you. I think that's some personal things that I just don't want to get into. But it feels like in your background, you had a lot of targeting experience.
I wasn't a
But
targeter. I wrote the
really,
software that, yeah, I wrote the so while I was in the military, I was an infantryman, just a straight leg,
wow.
heavy weapons infantryman. But while I was in, I got a degree in computer science and a master's in engineering and an MSc in cybersecurity. And then I started working. I got out in 2014, started working for Accenture Federal Services, and they needed. It was like being in the army again,
Mhm.
because like so many of the developers and systems guys were former military, and so we would get stuff done. Like that's the neat part about Accenture. It's like, hey, we need someone to go to Yuma because they're having a problem with this system, and we're all like, we'll get it done. And yeah, I ended up writing the targeting software. And that's why, like, I have people say, "Well, you're not a real intel guy," and I'm always reminded of something Michael Jordan once said to Kobe Bryant. As one day, Kobe was trash talking Michael Jordan on the court. Michael Jordan looked down. Kobe was wearing Air Jordans, and Michael said, "Man, how are you going to trash talk me when you're wearing my shoes? So how are you going to trash talk me when you're using my software?"
There you go. That's what I love about you, because you have gotten into that field, and I know you're using drones a lot now, and you were associated with a company before that was doing a lot of drone stuff that I was very interested in,
Yeah,
for things that I do in my day job, which is personnel recovery,
yeah.
and we're really trying to go heavy on autonomous systems, and how do we get things to the warfighter through autonomous systems. And I think you guys there had kind of broken the mold on that and said, this is how you do it
Yeah,
for.
you're absolutely right. The new drones in I actually am of the personal belief that the war in Ukraine, is going to see the beginning and the end of drone warfare. And people always go,
Okay.
the end of drone warfare? Oh, that's
Yep.
not possible. Well, when I would imagine the first weapons of war were probably a spear, right? Like, all right,
Yep.
here's a stick, I can sharpen it and I can stab you from far away, right? And that was probably a game changer until someone invented a shield. You still had spears, but now you have defenses. And when I was at the AUSA conference last year, one of the things I saw was that pretty much everything on the floor was either drone or counter drone. It's one of those two things. And I think that pretty soon we're going to get to the point where counter drone is just as good as drones. Right now,
Hmm.
the drones are exceeding the capabilities of counter drone systems. But as counter drone systems advance, you're going to see parity. And one of the ways to counter that will be having autonomous drones. So there's no control link, nothing. Right now, Russia's trying to do that with wire guided drones. They have seen some success in that because wire guided drones can't be jammed, but they have limited distance.
And
They
those
can
are
be
the
finicky,
FPV
right?
drones, right?
First person view drones, correct.
Yep.
And Ukraine has countered that with literally having dogfighting drones, FPV dogfighting drones. So you have dudes launching a drone and they're hunting other drones and trying to smash into them before those guys get near the front lines. So it's this constant spy versus spy, and I think autonomy will be the next level of that. We just have to have the political will to do that, because full autonomy means robotic killers.
Hmm.
And if we choose not to pursue that due to moral reasons, but China does, well, China can get inside our OODA loop, our observe, orient, act, decide loop, faster than we can respond, because they're thinking at machine speed and we're still thinking at human speed.
Hmm.
Even if we have, what was it, HODL, human on the loop, even if we have a HODL system, a HODL system can still be jammed, right? So we need the human out of the loop.
Yes.
And that's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. I mean, you look at a couple of days, and the truth is going to come out. A couple of days ago, it was last week, we shot down our own F-18. Well, how
Yep.
did that happen, right? Well, I would not be surprised if at some point our systems were in autonomous mode and sees the fighter for some reason, IFF, identify friend or foe, isn't working, and it goes, all right, well, let's shoot that thing down. And that's a tough pill to swallow, right?
Yeah,
The,
and that's just autonomous, right? So 2017, I was in
mm-hmm,
Poland doing overt anti-Russian aggression,
mm-hmm,
with a first of its kind contract owned, contract operated MQ-9 Reaper.
mm-hmm.
So we were running it as contractors in
Huh.
Poland, and the colonel that procured the system, and it was his money,
Mm-hmm.
and such a great guy. He was awesome. He came up to us and he was like, "So I want to put munitions on this drone, on this aircraft, and I want you guys, because we were all either agency or JSOC
Yeah.
guys." And he said, "I want you guys to be the button pushers, the guys who will, from start, from find to fix to finish." And I said, I was the team lead at the time, and I
Yeah.
looked at him and I was like, "No, I will never do that as a contractor." And that's a human being contractor.
Well,
And
what you
shortly
do
after
is
that,
you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
oh no, no, go ahead.
No, you take a laptop and you put it in the talk, and you send them, call them by radio and be like, all right, we found the target. You have to press the button. I can't do that.
Yeah,
I
that's what
mean,
I said.
that's.
As a contractor, I will not do that, because of certain legalities
Mhm.
that come into place on that.
Yeah.
But then 2019 happens, and it's like, hey, we want an autonomous system to find, fix, and finish. And I was out of it by that point. I was at the Joint Personnel Recovery Agency at that
Yeah.
point, doing different kind of things, and I was like, guys, do not go down that path. And I'd
Yeah.
like to get your opinion on that, on autonomous systems doing the finish, especially the finish portion, which is the killing of another human being because of the decision that it's making.
Well, we do that now. I mean, the Aegis system that's on all of our
Right.
destroyers, that is an autonomous system. It talks with other Navy ships. It decides what Navy ships fire, what targets to intercept. Normally that'll be missiles, but it could be manned aircraft. Patriot system, same way, fully autonomous. You can
Hmm.
fire it manually, but normally these engagements, they happen so fast, especially TBMs, theater ballistic missiles, that you just put the system in automated mode. It decides how to engage. It decides what weapon to use. It decides the engagement criteria, shoot, look, shoot, or salvo, or whatever. So we already have that. We're just moving it down to a smaller level, right? And we're taking that human out of the loop. And I think that in some ways it can be a better system because these systems don't get tired, they don't get scared.
Hmm.
So, how many times in Iraq did somebody shoot at a vehicle because they were scared? And oh my God, it didn't stop. And then they light up the vehicle, and they go in the vehicle, and it was just some dude who was having a heart attack, and they're trying to get their father to a hospital, right?
Yep.
A
Or
computer
real
might.
world, we had a
Yeah.
journalist on Route Irish trying to come in 2005
Mm-hmm.
time frame while I was out there,
Yeah.
and our security fired upon their convoy because the journalist was trying to get off of Route Irish, which, if you know anything about Route Irish in Iraq in
I was on
2005,
Irish. Yeah.
there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you do.
Yeah. Most
Very
dangerous
dangerous.
7.5 minutes in the world.
Yeah. we drove up. So we drove from Kuwait into Baghdad,
Yeah.
and this was when we were up armoring our own vehicles.
Yeah.
Soldering sheet
Mad Max
metal,
armor. Yeah.
Mad Max armor. Yeah, my I don't want to say very famously, but I tell this story that my door actually went off of its hinge because it was so heavy as
Wow.
soon as we crossed into Iraq. And so it was like, what do I
Well,
do now?
crap.
Um, but there was this sort of Cloverfield of death, right?
Yeah.
Going before you got on to Route Irish. And I had no idea driving through there that is what that was until about 2 months into my time as an intelligence analyst in Iraq. And they're like, oh yeah, it's a circle of death. And I was like, we drove that. Yeah. We
Yeah.
don't tell you that until afterwards. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
I actually,
You go to war with the army you have, not the army.
yeah. I actually knew someone who they drove down Predators, which was blacker than black,
Yes.
and and they got to the base. How'd you get here so fast? Like, oh, we drove down this road right here. It's like, what? That was Predators. It was blacker than black, man. How do you drive down that road? The only thing I can think of why they're still alive is that the bad guys are like, whoa, if this guy's going down Predators, I'm not messing with him.
With that guy. Well, we're about what? We're about 20 minutes in. I do want to introduce you. It's Ryan McBeth. He's I mean, wonderful YouTuber who does a lot of good content on intelligence analysis and a lot of drone warfare, things like that. But Ryan, thank you for coming on. Absolutely appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh man, I love it. I love all your videos. You kind of remind me of what I would have liked to have done with what I'm doing, but I've got to be a little more serious about things. But I'm not. I'm a very sarcastic human being. I go by the mantra of somebody had said something of like, "Oh, you believe in the moon landing," and I'm the guy that goes back with, "You're the kind of guy that believes in the moon. Who are you?" Just to I had a guy that he was a intel analyst for the agency, and he worked with me. And he goes, "I don't know when you're serious and when you're not serious, and I don't know how to feel about that." And that's what I feel about you, Ryan. And I love it. I absolutely love your content, everything about it. But if you want to just introduce yourself before we get into, what 2025 holds
All right. Well, my name is
for
Ryan McBeth. I am a software engineer. I'm a YouTuber. I was a 20-year career infantryman, mainly doing heavy weapons, anti-tank stuff. Um, I retired. I started working for Accenture as a software engineer, mainly doing C4ISR. We found bad guys, essentially. I wrote the software that would help find bad guys. And about 2 years ago, it's 18 months ago, I decided to quit my job and do YouTube full time. I actually started my YouTube channel to help other programmers learn software, learn how to answer interview questions during a software interview. And when the war in Ukraine kicked off, I made a couple of videos about cybersecurity in Ukraine, and I made a video why tank turrets pop off their hulls. And all of a sudden, like, I went from 5,000 subscribers to 50,000 subscribers, and I'm like, all right, I guess this is what people want. And I guess one of the interesting things is that at the time there was nobody who was really explaining the news. They would explain, look at these Russians with their tank turrets popped off their hulls, and I was the guy who could come on YouTube and say, here's why this happens. It happens because the Russians store their ammunition in a carousel underneath the turret. So when the tank is hit, all of those rounds go straight up and the turret pops off like a Pringles can lid. And, I think a lot of my ability to explain this stuff down to a lower level came from my ability to explain to software developers, hey, here's how you answer this software question. Let me dumb this down in a way that you can answer this very easily in an interview. And so I guess I just filled a need that was there, and I've been doing YouTube full time since 2023. I'm also a published author. A bunch of
let's plug the book first of all.
Oh,
Because you got a new
right.
book out. Like, come
I
on.
do. The Wind Machine, which is
Yes.
It is about a hedge fund. I wish I don't have it on me right now. It's about
It'll
a.
be in the show notes. Plus, give me the link where they can get a signed
Yeah, I
copy,
can get them.
please.
Oh well, the signed copies have all been sold out. They were on Bunker
Oof,
Branding. I should probably do
too
another run
late.
of that. But the Win Machine is essentially what if Doctor Strange ran a hedge fund. This it's about a hedge fund manager who has an AI-based supercomputer that can predict stocks with some pretty good accuracy. And one day, the software predicts a nuclear exchange with China. So now the question is, do you profit off of that, or do you help the U.S. military stop the war, or maybe even help them win the war? So that was kind of an idea that I had, and a bunch of people were saying you should write a book. And so I wrote a short story, I guess about a year ago. It was called Warlock, which was about an Irish traveler who was kind of like a little gift of magic ability to kind of see where people are in a house before he robs them. And that person is contracted by the FBI to find Osama bin Laden after the terrorist attacks. And that short story did so well that I thought, all right, well, I guess I'll write a book. I did it because people wanted it, right? And I wanted to write the kind of book that Tom Clancy would have written today if he were
Hmm.
still alive, right? Something that was a techno thriller, but also like heavy on the techno part, heavy on the software part, but still accessible to the average person. So, and yeah, so that's done. That's published. There's an audiobook out there for Marines, and it's doing pretty darn well.
I love it. I'm a
It,
stone's throw from Quantico, so it
you
makes me
know,
happy. Any Marine hate? That's not
well,
hate. Sorry.
I'm supposed to do a podcast with Kyle. Well, not Kyle Dunnigan. Kyle Dunlop. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we're.
He's
I asked
great.
him like, yeah, and he sure seems. And I actually helped him out once with some software issues or cybersecurity issues. As people were scraping his content and like changing him into AI, and his AI avatar was endorsing things he wouldn't endorse,
Oh
which
man.
is absolutely terrifying. That's actually one of the
Yes.
reasons I like to smoke in my videos.
'Cause
It's very I'm sorry, it's very difficult to get smoke right in AI.
that's hey, that is good to know. I'll start doing that. We haven't really gone video. I asked you before if video was okay with this because 2025, I'm looking at going
Yeah,
video. The wife who co-hosts This Week Explained with me, which is our weekly
yeah,
geopolitical podcast, which tries to do exactly what you do, which is take the
yeah,
news and then explain what the news doesn't really explain to you as the why, or the so what, kind of what intelligence
yeah.
analysts do. That's good to know. Just start smoking in all of our videos.
At least that's the
Although I don't
excuse
know.
I make, right? I
There
also
you go.
love these things, so
But yeah, and to so Kyle Dunlap, yeah, he's great. I don't really interact with him too much,
yeah.
but I've seen his videos and I know of him through other people. Seems like a really great guy, and I can't wait for you to do something with him and have an episode come out. I will definitely listen to that. Two of my favorite people, Mike Baker, Ryan McBeth, recently doing the PDB. That episode I had to listen to, and it was part of the reason. I think it's part of the reason why we were supposed to do this episode 2 months ago,
Mm.
and you had gotten COVID, and you were so gracious to even want to do the episode, but you were like, my voice is not going to be well. Could we postpone it? And so we postponed it to now. And it was after I heard the stuff you were talking about for 2025 with
Mm.
Mike Baker. I was like, Ryan needs to come on to talk to our audience about some things he's looking at, in the cyber realm. And one thing in particular that I got a lot of hate on Twitter was calling out how far behind the US is behind adversaries in the cyber realm, in other, AI, certain munitions. We just had a supposed sixth generation fighter come out from China. We're still piecing together whether that's sixth gen or if it's 4++ or five
They,
plus.
they could have put a new skin on a flanker, right?
Right.
They They spent their XP getting the skin for the flanker, and look, it's a sixth
Yep.
generation fighter, guys. We totally have one. What's kind of interesting with that particular plane is that it looks like it's a tandem cockpit. So that's kind of like my first clue that all right, this might be a reskinned flanker, right? And flanker's a good platform, nothing wrong with a flanker, right? But something like that might be used in more of like a strike bomber role, like maybe a stealthier kind of flanker kind of thing. Is it sixth gen? I mean, look, according to Elon Musk, fighters are stupid, right?
Okay, yeah. If we're going to get
So,
into that conversation, drones are supposed to be everywhere. And even the United States says that they want to go. I was at the Defense One conference,
mhm,
and it was the assistant sec def
mhm,
that came up. But whoever it was, they were just talking about smaller. We want things that are smaller and things that are cheap and things that you can produce a lot of. So it was mini. So mini and mini, MINI and MANY. They wanted things you can produce a lot of, very cheap. So you're thinking drone swarms, things like that. That's what the U.S. at that point is focused on. And I've been in a lot of AI
yeah.
conferences for the U.S. military, and every single leader that has come out has said, we are behind in AI. We are behind in cyber warfare. We, the United States.
So,
And I put
oh,
that out,
mhm,
and I got a lot of hate. We're not behind. We're 2 decades ahead. All of this stuff. And the only reason leadership is talking
yeah.
about it and saying that we're behind is because they want more money, and all the Pentagon wants is more money. So correct me if I'm wrong, or
Yeah.
tell me where I'm right. That's what I would like to for you to
So,
do.
boy, that's a couple of things. So to start with many and many, it's not a bad idea on the surface. One of the big problems with the U.S. is that we don't do a lot of small cheap drone manufacturing here.
Yep.
But it's also very dangerous to believe that the next war will be like the war in Ukraine. Why is Ukraine using these FPV drones? Well, they're using them because we couldn't get them enough artillery ammunition, essentially. That's why. Because we slow walked our equipment to Ukraine. We gave them just enough to slowly lose, as opposed to enough to actually win.
Right.
Now, whether there's enough arrows in our quiver, that's a different story that we could talk about. Maybe we physically don't have the artillery rounds to give them, the equipment to give them. We got plenty of F-16s in the desert, in Arizona, in the boneyard. We can get them the equipment that they need, at least in some cases. But the scary part, and occasionally I see this, like I've heard people say that every Army squad needs a drone operator. Well, hold on. First off, the Army we don't kind of focus on the squad, we focus on the platoon, right? So maybe every
Yep.
platoon needs a drone operator, right? That might be a thing. And the other thing to kind of think of is why is Ukraine using these FPV drones? Because they don't have artillery, but we do. So we can't kill the bad guys by the onesies and twosies like the
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainians are doing. We need to kill them by the bushel, and you do that with artillery and precision fires. So any FPV drone that you throw out there to go after one guy, that could be a drone that you manufactured to spot for artillery or precision fires. So why are we killing in onesies and twosies? There might be a role for FPV drones, especially in special forces or maybe for special circumstances. Like, all right, there's a lot of collateral damage that's possible if I go into this house. I'm going to send this FPV drone in through the window and hunt down this guy inside. That might be a reason to use an FPV drone. But I think that isn't a very common capability. That is something I believe the Israelis are doing. So we need to concentrate on creating an infrastructure for small, cheap drones, because right now, I think some of the cheapest military drones you can find are $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get that price down, maybe to $2,000, if that's even possible in the U.S. The second thing regarding cybersecurity, I think our defensive cybersecurity is pretty good. I mean, obviously not if you're the Treasury Department, but
Yeah, well, that
we
just came out.
we don't tend to advertise our offensive cyber capabilities, and that's mainly because we're still operating under law of armed conflict. where you don't attack civilian infrastructure. So if you're China, it's very difficult to attack military infrastructure because things like SIPR or JWICS, it's air gapped. And there's no path out to the internet unless you're going through like a cross-domain solution that filters stuff out, right? So the only option they have is to attack civilian infrastructure, even government infrastructure that is not air gapped. Whereas in the US, we aren't going to launch an attack on a bank and hurt civilians. We're not going to launch an attack on a power station and hurt civilians. So we can't necessarily show our offensive cyber capabilities because that would hurt civilians. Now, whether we have ways of attacking the militaries, our adversaries' military in an air-gapped fashion, that is up for debate. I can put it like that. Stuxnet, which was a virus that was essentially put on printers that were sold to Iran, and these printers downloaded a virus into the network that controlled centrifuges. That is one example of getting past an air gap, right? So there may be ways of doing that, but we might not necessarily show our hand. And I think that we most likely have robust cyber capabilities, we just haven't shown it. And I think probably one of the dumbest thing, I don't want to criticize our current administration. I don't like getting political at all, but then you have to get political, right?
Yeah.
But one of our big
I
issues.
say the exact same thing, Ryan.
Yeah,
we're not a
one of
political
our
podcast.
one of our big issues is that it seems like the current administration does not have the fortitude to stand up to state actors and non-state actors who cause cyber damage. And to put it a different way, Reagan would be bombing by now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've advocated for, and I've gone around to different military bases and I've given speeches about this, is that we need to kinetically strike disinformation actors during time of war, and we need to consider cyber attacks to be an act of war. So if you launch a cyber attack, cool, we are going to find you and we are going to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
This is a weapon. And during time of war, look, I've said that TikTok is a cyber weapon, not just because it influences people, but because it is capable of kinetic effectors. One example I often give is the MV Cape Orlando. So, regardless of how anyone feels about the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, there was this Arab organization. It was like the AROC, Arab something organization committee. And they convinced a bunch of weak-minded college students to go into the port of Long Beach and to break in and glue themselves to the MV Cape Orlando because the MV Cape Orlando was carrying weapons bound for Israel. Now, I guess none of these college students looked at a map, because if you were going to ship weapons to Israel, you would do so from the Atlantic rather than the Pacific.
Right.
But that's why they're called useful idiots, right?
Yeah.
And so they go and they glue themselves to the MV Cape Orlando, and that prevented the MV Cape Orlando from leaving. How was this organized? Through TikTok, through Instagram.
Yep.
Why aren't we killing these people? Because now we can't kill the protesters, but we can kill the people who gave them those orders in that foreign country. And when you have a weapon system that results in kinetic effects, there is no difference between that and a bomb. There is no difference between telling a useful idiot to go glue themselves to the side of a ship, which prevents the ship from leaving, or having a special forces team put a limpet mine on the ship that causes damage that prevents the ship from leaving. The kinetic effects are the same. The effector is the same. So, yeah, I would think
I absolutely
under.
agree, Ryan. And so the one that I usually use is not on that level, but it's the letter to the United States from Bin Laden.
Yeah.
Which came about early, was it this summer or springtime? And that was TikTok. And why did that happen? You know, and it's these secondary and tertiary effects as to what's the whole point of having the letter to bin Laden the letter from bin Laden to the United States posted, and then having these accounts that are very large and have a lot of influence saying, first of all, it's some bot accounts from adversarial countries saying, I agree. I think the United States is messed up and that everything bin Laden said is actually true. And then that starts getting more and more. And then you have legitimate accounts in the United States of young adults who are reading it and who are saying, oh, I do agree as well. And then it gets platformed even more. And that's my issue with
Yeah.
TikTok. And since we're getting into the 2025, what do you think is going to happen with TikTok?
It seems like TikTok, they tried to appeal their decision. I think that was on December 13th. I think December 12th or 13th.
Yep.
Their appeal got denied by a federal court, and they have to find a buyer before now and January 19th. Now, President Trump said that he wants to keep TikTok around, but that's kind of a congressional decision. And, if you're a congressman, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or not. It doesn't matter if you support President Trump. At the end of the day, you are accountable to your constituents, right? And, you want to get elected again. And so if you vote for banning TikTok and then all of a sudden you flip and decide, all right, well, I'm going to reverse my decision, you're going to have to answer why. And there's going to be all sorts. You want to be the guy that gets attack ads, Mike Flutely Dupe wants China to influence your children.
And that's the ad, right?
Yeah,
because
so
that's
Chinese influence. That's a tough pill to swallow. And is President Trump gonna help you then? And look,
we can say, well, the coming generation, they love TikTok. I've got a 20, 18, and 16-year-old. They absolutely hate TikTok now.
Really?
They really do, because it's so influencing, and there's mental health issues, and they see it, and they're like, I'm not on it anymore, because I brought it up. I've said, hey, so what do you guys think? This could get taken out. What's your life going to be like? And they're like, it's going to be so much better if it just gets deleted, because it's an addiction. I can't stop it. But if it gets deleted, that's fine. And then there's the whole free speech aspect to it, right? I've had a commentary with a group for free speech who has said they want to stop the ban of TikTok because it is a free speech ban. And I'm trying to tell people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would absolutely love to hear a different side of this, that it's not I think it's not a free speech issue, because you can go anywhere and put your voice out. It's just TikTok, we can't allow the CCP to promote certain things that then have a negative aspect to freedom, to the United States, to the Western world, really.
Well, I think the difference is that you're right, that this is something that the Chinese government has control over. And when it comes to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you can haul those executives in front of Congress and say, tell me why you allowed this to happen, right? Now, freedom of speech, it really means the government can't constrain your speech. It's not the case with private corporations, and it's certainly not the case of freedom of consequences, right? Like I can say things right now that would not only get you demonetized, but that would get me canceled, right?
Please don't,
I can say a whole string of words.
Money.
So I have free speech. The government can't punish me for saying those things, but people can say, you know what? I don't like Ryan McBeth. I don't like those views that he just said. I'm not going to watch him anymore, right? So freedom of speech doesn't mean consequence free. And the argument of, well, you can just go someplace else. I mean, I know that there was, I think it was in New Jersey, a town banned strip clubs. And the town's argument was, well, you can just go someplace else in town. You can just go to a different town. And
it's like a freedom of expression kind of thing.
Pole dancing could be considered freedom of expression. This is how I express my dancing is how I express whatever, my feelings or whatever. So that is a reasonable thing to believe. And saying, well, you can just go to some other town. Well, you're obviously saying that they have a right to do this. They just don't have a right to do it in your town. So that argument was kind of thrown out by, I believe, the New Jersey Supreme Court. And you might be able to control, like, all right, you have to have a strip club in this certain location, but you can't ban them altogether, right? So the saying, oh, you can just go to a different platform, well, that's kind of a tough one too.
Mm-hmm.
The big issue is that TikTok is essentially owned by a foreign company, and those executives are not held accountable. And even if TikTok itself has American executives, if someone from corporate, someone from oh my God, I forget the darn name of the company that owns TikTok. It's not Tencent. It's
ByteDance.
ByteDance.
Yep.
So if some executive from ByteDance comes to you and says, hey, we need the addresses of all of these journalists who have TikTok accounts because we need to know where they're located in the U.S., are you going to lose your job over that? Are you going to say, darn it, I quit, I'm not doing that? Well, then someone else is just going to do it. Someone else with less ethics is going to do it. So it's just better to have those companies under the U.S. We're not saying you can't do it. We're just saying it has to be a U.S.-owned company. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. And plus, China bans TikTok. Well, they don't allow Instagram and Facebook.
What is it called there? Or is it just ByteDance?
I actually don't remember.
I don't know. I
should have prepared more for this. But they have, like, they allow, they reduce the amount of time children can spend on it. A lot of their stuff is, their equivalent of TikTok is science stuff on it and history.
Because they would rather we spend all of our time on there. And that's been my campaign against TikTok. And then I started to notice, especially in 2024, and I don't have cable or TV. I have streaming services. And sometimes you have ads there. And TikTok made a really big push in their ads that I found very interesting, that there were veteran and military TikTok ads of, hey, you can't ban TikTok because I'm a veteran and I made money doing veteran support kind of things based off of TikTok. And I called bullshit on that, as you didn't really make money off of this free service of TikTok. No, TikTok decided that your content was maybe not just pro CCP, but it may have gone against the West and the United States. And that's why your company was promoted. And that's why this advertisement was made. So I'm very wary of TikTok, and I have been for about 3 or 4 years now. I've been talking about it on the podcast and things like that.
Yeah, there might be some of that. It also might be compelling content, right? Like Preston Stewart, he's another YouTuber, fantastic guy,
I love Preston
artillery
Stewart.
guy. He does a lot of content for TikTok, and in a lot of ways, it's almost like binge learning, right? Or you can binge watch Preston's TikTok channel, and you can learn so much. And I think maybe he was promoted in that algorithm because it is something that's engaging, right?
Yep.
The scary part, and I saw this today, it was that it's the amount of effort that goes into something that doesn't have a lot of shelf life. There was a I don't know if it might have been an Instagram reel where, like, it kind of showed like how, like, people who think they exercise get into a fight. So this guy's walking down the street and he sees a woman's purse being grabbed by a robber, and he he shows himself in the gym doing the lateral pull.
I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, and he's wrestling the thing away, and then another guy who does jujitsu, he gets down in the prone, is like, come on, wrestle with me. And then another woman starts pole dancing because she does pole dancing exercise. And that must have taken 8 to 10 hours to shoot and edit, to find the people, to shoot it, to write the script, to shoot it, to edit it. It must have taken 8 to 10 hours to do. And you watch it in 20 seconds and you never watch it again.
Yeah.
And that, in a lot of ways, like that is not a sustainable business model. Like sooner or later, you're going to run out of ideas. And I've seen that with a lot of creators. Like, I guess one famous guy, the Povo guy, he sits in like a Snuggie, and it might
Yes.
be a
Yeah.
TikTok thing. He sits
No,
in a
he's a
Snuggie, like,
TikTok.
oh, look at
I
that,
see
you
him
have
on Instagram
ice.
Reels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have ice because you're poor. And
Yes.
like that I guess that can last as long as people are making videos. Like people always ask me, what can I do with this Birkin bag? How do I wear it? Like, as long as people are making videos like that, you can probably, I don't want to say leech off of that content, because you are being creative and you are extending it. You're significantly altering it. But for like the one trick ponies, like the woman who did the very demure thing,
Oh, yes. Which went
like where is that
viral.
woman now?
Yeah, I haven't heard
Uh,
Demure
I
in a
haven't
few
heard of
months
that,
now,
right?
right?
So, like, in some ways, it's not sustainable. I think one of the reasons I've been successful is that I have a level of sustainability with conflict, with computer science, with cybersecurity, and with just explaining why things are the way they are, at least to my level.
And I wanted to talk to
Yeah.
you about that
Hmm.
because I think a lot of people see content creators like yourself.
Hmm.
I don't put myself into that because I haven't figured out the whole video thing, and I just put a podcast out and I do some tweets, and our Instagram is kind of mini influencer,
Hmm.
but I don't do a lot of video. And in
Yeah.
2025, I want to do more video content. And if you don't mind, I'll hit you up a couple of times
Yeah.
throughout the year to see if I'm doing it the right way. But you do an incredible job. And I think a lot of people see that and go, oh, he just puts a background, says some things, cuts it, and that's about 10 minutes. It's a 2-minute
Oh.
video it's about 10 minutes to take, but you're doing 20 minutes of video. And how long does it take you to do that video? Because I think it probably takes you hours.
Hours.
Yeah.
So it depends on the video. Like in some videos, the military will invite me to go someplace. Like, here's how airborne operations work, or here's how I did an air assault with the 101st. Made a whole video about how you do air assault operations, and like down to the technical level of like how they plan them, and this is how many helicopters can fit in this size landing zone, and so on. Um, I did yeah, the stuff like that. That could take days of research, weeks of writing and research, and then usually the rough rule is that the way I do videos, for every minute of content, it took me about an hour to edit,
Yeah.
and that doesn't even count the writing time. And I've reached out. And I have a researcher now, a part-time researcher. He's a very good guy. He's a college professor in New Mexico, and for stuff that's like, man, I want to cover this, but I don't have the time to research all this stuff. I like, dude, this is for like the long term stuff, like for stuff like the airliner shoot down that happened a couple of days ago. I can knock that
Right.
out in a couple of hours. I might have to text a couple of Air Force guys like, hey, is this really how this works? But for long term stuff, like I just did a video on how procurement works, is it's called RDA, the research development acquisition process.
Yep.
A lot of people understand the R and the D. Not a lot of people understand the A. Like, how do we actually acquire things like an aircraft carrier? What is the actual process? And there's all these rules. It's probably one of the most boring videos I've ever made. But like, I wanted to do that,
Right.
like just to put it out there to fight all of the Annie Jacobsons, who talk about the military-industrial complex and the waste of money, and like no, dude, you have no idea how hard it is to buy something like a tank, and all the milestones you have to hit, and all the costs you have to keep down, and all of
Yeah. So
you have
that's
to,
a video
yeah.
that I really appreciate. It's not that one. You did another procurement video. I think it was Elon Musk said something about a particular nut or bolt that
Oh
cost.
yeah, it wasn't
That was one
Elon
of my
Musk.
favorite videos. I'm sure you thought it was boring to create and stuff like that,
Yeah,
but it was so intriguing because it hit exactly where it needed to hit, which is, yeah, mostly you can go to Ace Hardware or Home
yeah,
Depot or Lowe's, and you can go get for 20 cents, you can go get a nut or a bolt.
yeah.
You cannot put that bolt or nut on an aircraft. It will not be approved for that aircraft.
You're absolutely right. Some of those bolts are made out of certain kinds of materials. Some of them they're X-rayed to make sure there's absolutely no fractures in them, and they've tested these bolts to ensure that they don't shear to a certain
Hmm.
point. Right, so there's all this testing that might go into a titanium aircraft bolt that you don't see at the bolt that's at Ace Hardware. Right, that's keeping your deck together. Right,
Yep.
so that's kind of a that's the and people say like, well, how come they spent $500 on a hammer? Well, it's probably not $500, but let's say the U.S. Army spent $50 on a hammer. Why did they spend $50 on a hammer as opposed to going to Home Depot? Well, can that hammer survive in the Arctic? Can that hammer survive a drop from 500 feet? Can that hammer be decontaminated if it's hit with chemical weapons? Does that hammer create a spark when it strikes something? Maybe you need a no spark hammer, right? So there's a lot of factors that a lot of people don't understand, and you in a lot of ways I just done a video about this just today. It was the Navy's railgun. We canceled the
Hmm.
Navy's railgun, and I actually visited the railgun. I did this whole video about it, and then the people who invited me down said, "Please don't do a video about this. It's too contentious." And like, I wasted all that time, but it was, I saw the railgun, and the railgun works, and I think that the Navy, it's you have this thing works well, and then the question is like, all right, we have a finite amount of money. We could either buy more missiles that will help us now, or we could put money into this railgun that will work in 10 years, maybe,
Hmm.
right? And the real thing is we need to do both. And the people who go like, well, the military industrial complex, blah, 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 they don't understand the financial pressures a lot of programs are under. There isn't this endless bucket of money. A lot of organizations have to make very hard choices.
Yeah. And even so, I was a part of a group that had what was called a black budget.
Hmm.
Wasn't,
Yeah.
on the books. So we'd go do whatever we wanted. And we needed headphones because, we're listening in
Hmm.
to a lot of things. So, the uh, I think it was the first sergeant. No, he was gunny sergeant,
Hmm.
Marine gunny sergeant. It was a joint JSOC,
Yeah.
Joint Special Operations Command, and he was tasked to go to Best Buy and get headphones for
Yeah.
everybody. And he went to Best Buy. He came back with Beats by Dre in 2010. These
Okay.
were the best headphones. He talked to the guy. They were the
Yeah.
best. He had an unlimited budget. And I'm saying this because of the procurement process and why it is important to get educated people into the
Yeah.
procurement process to pay the right amount of money. He spent an ungodly amount of money, gave us Beats by Dre, and they were not what we needed because we needed to talk back to the warfighter on the ground. We needed to
Yeah.
talk to the drone operators, things like that. And these were 2010, so it's one of the first
Hmm.
noise canceling headphones you could buy. They were extreme, $300 a pop, and we were 18 analysts times 4, do the math.
Yeah.
That many headphones is what you needed, and we hated them. They
Huh.
were the best headphones you could have to listen to music. They were the worst headphones you could have for targeting
Hmm.
because they really didn't work well. They didn't have a great microphone,
Hmm.
um, and then and this is a lot about, and this in the DoD. It's a lot about how long do these last.
Yeah.
So I'm doing procurement a lot now for personnel recovery, long term survival. So like a life straw, a
Okay.
lot of units are buying them off the shelf. I don't appreciate LifeStraw because they break. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to find something else off the shelf that doesn't break very quickly.
Hmm.
And that's the big thing in the military. If it's going to break in 6 months to a year, we don't want it. And that's what those were.
That
Beats by
that could
Dre.
that could be a thing. I can tell you that on the program I worked on, which is called Aegeon, which is a targeting system, ISR system. This system, we had a way to manipulate cameras with this system, and you basically had a choice. We had this $20,000, almost looked like a flight stick, like military
Yep.
grade flight stick, and then we altered our software to accept a USB Xbox controller, and let me tell you, the Xbox controller was better. And
Oh, there you go.
not only was it better, but people intuitively knew how to use it
Mm-hmm.
very, very easily. Whereas, like, you needed a whole training program with this flight stick. And in a case like that, I've never seen an Xbox controller break. I mean, maybe if you throw it, when you're losing an NBA
Yeah, come
2K,
over to
it'll
my
break.
house, Ryan. You'll see
Yeah.
it.
So maybe it can break. But all right, so if you have five of them, right? So there's probably a case for having commercial off the shelf stuff when necessary. Like regarding your life straw. So I guess this is for people out doing personnel recovery. So how long are they out in the field? If they're out in the field for a month, all right, maybe a life straw is a good choice. If they're out in the
Mhm.
field for a year, all right, maybe we need something else. So there
Right.
might be a point where commercial off the shelf stuff can save money, especially since all the R&D has already been put into it, and you just go buy the thing.
Yeah, I think another aspect to
Mm-hmm.
that is when you're looking at, we're still on the procurement
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Like you go, well, I went on Amazon and I found the exact same thing that the military paid $300 for. I spent $30. And then you go, well, where is that from? Let's go on
Yeah.
Amazon. Oh, that's from China. Well, the US isn't going to buy something for the warfighter, especially a technology that's built and made in China or
Yeah.
pretty much anywhere except for certain, and I know this because I've been doing commercial off the shelf and I've
Mm-hmm.
done procurement. If you're the US, the UK, Canada, Five Eye,
Mm-hmm.
we'll purchase those things. But if you are Russia, China,
Yeah.
even the Philippines, places like that, the US is not buying those things. It's cheaper, but we're just
Yeah.
not going to buy it.
Yeah. I think we just held up F-35 production. I want to say it was a couple of months ago because we
Yes.
found out that one of the magnets used in the F-35 was made of a rare earth metal from China.
Hmm.
And China, the Russians, they try to influence U.S. elections, U.S. political process. The Chinese, they haven't really done that yet, but one of the things you do see them trying to do is influence environmental process.
Hmm.
And if you are some dude who's in Wyoming and someone wants to open up a rare earth mine in Wyoming, and you really don't want those trucks rumbling through your quiet little neighborhood, and you start your own little organization to prevent this mine from being built, someone from China hands you a check for $50,000. What are you going to say? Right?
Yeah, I'm gonna be
And
like
it, it
50
it's in
million.
your yeah, it's in your best interest not to have this mine there, but it's in China's best interest for the US not to mine anything,
Yeah.
right? Because they want all the rare earths coming from China. They want windmills made with Chinese rare earths and electric motors made from Chinese rare earths and the catalytic converters made from Chinese rare earths. So yeah, that you tend to see China trying to influence U.S. environmental policy. Um,
Absolutely. That's my
mhm.
big push with the African continent
Hmm.
is that the US is getting pushed out. And I worked on the African continent
Yeah.
for from 2014 to 2018. And I was there, not working side by side, but I was living side by side
Yeah.
with Chinese businessmen
Yeah.
who were there just to procure rare earth minerals, and they were trying to push us out. and it's starting to work. I've been out for a while. It's working now. Russia is pushing the West out, and I think people have this America first conversation, and they go, get out of all of these countries and continents and get away. And I go, that's true. We should be out of some places, but somewhere like the African continent, where we are making headway with terrorists and insurgents, and we are getting access to some rare earth minerals, is a net positive for the United States.
I can tell you, if you are, it's a tough deal, right? If you are a dictator in Africa, all right, you're running some country in Africa, and the Chinese come to you and they say, hey, we're going to offer you these Huawei 5G cell phone towers, all right, and you can put them up all over your country for 20 cents on the dollar. We'll put them up for you. Your economy will benefit. Your people will be able to check the status of their goods in the market over a cell phone. And you'll be able to skim off 20%, putting your rich friends in charge of the new cell phone company. And all we ask is that you let us listen in on your cell phone transmissions once in a while. And then you go to the U.S. and say, hey, the Chinese offered me cell phone towers for 20 cents on the dollar. What do you give me? And we go, oh, well, don't do that. Well, what?
Which is what I say. Don't do it.
What are you gonna do if you're this African dictator? You're gonna go,
right.
Well, one of these paths leads me to being rich, and the other is not so good.
There may be a coup in my future, but
yeah,
at least I will be financially secure.
I can see how China might be pushing us out because, although actually, I think there was. Just recently, there was I think it was in Kenya. China built a railway, and the Kenya took out a loan from China to build this railway, but nobody actually takes this railway. So Kenya is in a lot of debt to China, and actually some of China's infrastructure projects are failing. And people are going, why the hell did we take out a loan to buy this thing? We allowed the Chinese to build it with Chinese steel, Chinese labor, Chinese concrete. And now, this project isn't holding up, right?
Yep.
So that can be an issue as well, buyer's remorse.
I think it is an issue. And on our podcast, which nobody listens to, but I try to bring out, especially like the new Silk Road that... I can't remember now.
The Belt and Road Initiative?
Really, yeah, the Belt Road. I called out countries for being part of that because China is trying to influence not for your financial improvement, it's for their own. And so you are going to be left, and now countries are seeing that, where they're being left behind because it's not productive for China. It's not increasing their economy, and so they just push it away. And what I tell people, when I worked on the African continent, what we did, even as an intel analyst, we were in countries like Burkina Faso, Chad, Niger, and we were building communities. We were building schools on my own dime. Look, I was a contractor. This wasn't government procured. I spent money to build schools and build certain infrastructure in Africa because I loved the people there. And I worked alongside Chinese businessmen who did not do that. All they cared about was what are the rare earth elements, and if we get those rare earth elements, that's completely for me and for the CCP. And I try to call that out. And so as we head into 2025, and I don't want to take too much of your time, I'll take as much as you want. I'll be here for 4 hours, Ryan. You tell me when to stop. But
I have a hard stop at 2, and I probably need. I'm going to be on TV in a couple hours, and at 2:00, so I gotta get off to change clothes and should probably shave. So
good deal. Yeah, for sure. But what are you looking for 2025, and then we'll wrap up this conversation.
Okay. So for 2025, I guess what I'm looking for is a new change in the White House, right?
Hmm.
Would We're gonna have to see how that affects the globe in the sense that you now have a wild card who may not necessarily act the way people thought he was going to act. One good example is the H-1B visas, where
Absolutely.
you have all of these Trump supporters who they genuinely expected, oh, America first. We're not going to have these H-1Bs in our country anymore. And Trump was like, yeah, no, we're probably going to extend that program. And now you have these people feeling betrayed. Well, I did a video on that one where I said, like, look, there's just not enough American engineers. I'm
Hmm.
talking about computer science people, not necessarily techs, which would be like the IT guys, the guys who come and fix your printer. We have plenty of those, but when I went to school for computer science, it's a lot of second generation Indian kids.
Yep.
The thing, it was half Indian kids and then half white kids. And after Calc One, it was Indian kids and me.
Yep.
And
Well,
like
what I
people
really
got
appreciate about
mad.
it, your video with that
Yeah.
was your talk about like, but if you want a clearance, yeah, you're going to
Yeah.
be an American and you're going to have this kind of stuff. But for the stuff Elon Musk wants to do, that is going to be H1 Bravo.
It might be. If you're working for Tesla, if you're working for SpaceX, you're going to need a clearance.
Right.
But for one of the issues that I've seen, at least when in the computer science arena, is that you have a lot of Americans who they're told by their parents, all right, you got to go to college. Oh, and they go like, well, I really like video games, so maybe I'll be a computer programmer. And maybe they're pretty good at like building their own game rig or something like that, right? And so then they get to college, they do computer science, they get through the first year just fine, mainly because they haven't really taken any computer science courses. And then the second year, when they have to take calculus, that's where they go, oh crap, this is actually hard.
Yep.
And they drop out, go information systems. And then they wonder, like, how come I'm not getting these high paying jobs when I'm in IT? Well, it's because everyone who dropped out went information systems. And if you only toughed it out, you would have stayed and you
Right.
would have gotten that computer science degree, you'd have a job by now. Although I shouldn't speak that that poorly about it because there are some people who have graduated from. I know there is a hiring issue right now with younger people who are trying to get their foot in the door. There aren't a lot of entry level computer science jobs anymore. That is an issue, and those
Yep.
people, I understand their grievances because they were promised you're going to have this $100,000 job as soon as you graduate, and if they get an interview, now they're asking 85K. And
Yep.
I think a lot of that has to deal with there are those jobs, but they don't want to move to Nashville, right? They want to work in
Or
San
Austin.
Francisco or Austin, right? Like
Yeah.
they they don't want to move to find the work. They want to work in New York. They want to work in San Francisco, and those entry level jobs just aren't necessarily there, or they
Yep.
are there, but there is a lot of competition for them. Another thing that I think we're going to see in 2025 is I think we're going to see the war in Ukraine continue.
Hmm.
I hate to make predictions about that, but
We don't talk about predictions, Ryan. We say
well,
assessments.
assessments. One of Putin's big problems is that he literally can't stop the war. He can't stop
Interesting.
it because their economy is overheating right now. You have a lot of people working in defense sector jobs. I want to say it was around 23% of their economy is being plowed back into the military.
Hmm.
And if President Trump said, "Oh, I'm going to stop the war day one, 24 hours," I mean, you can try. You can give it the old college try, but I think that, and I've said this before, my assessment is that President Trump's going to sit down with Zelensky and Putin and say, let's come to an agreement. And because Putin's objectives aren't met yet, and he still has the upper hand when it comes to men and materiel, in some cases, the Russia is running out of tanks. uh, he's not going to stop this war, especially since the second he stops it, all these people are going to be out of work, and he's going to end up
Right.
hanging upside down outside of a gas station or get the
Hmm.
Ceausescu special, right? So I could easily see President Trump being very upset that his offer was rebuffed, and the next thing he does is he gives Ukraine not a blank check, but what do you want? You're going to pay for it. What do you want? Right? I
It's
could.
already, so you say that, but it's already happening because Lavrov just rebuffed Trump's peace deal, right? That just
Yeah.
happened. We're recording on December 31st,
Mm-hmm.
hoping to put this out January 1st for 2025. Lavrov already said he doesn't like Trump's peace deal. So you were
Yeah.
correct, Ryan,
Yeah.
that it's not going to be accepted. And it's going to be very interesting to see what Putin does.
I also see the U.S. Army becoming more heavily invested in drones, down to the
Absolutely.
platoon and squad level. They're already trying to figure it out. You see that like Project Capstone 4, which I attended last year. We'll see it with
Yep.
Project Capstone 5 this year. And one of their big things was last year they 3D printed a part on a Navy destroyer. They put it on a drone and they flew that drone out to a squad and dropped that part off.
Wow.
So a furtherance of technology, reliance on drones, reliance on 3D fabricated parts that you can print on a ship and have
Yep.
that delivered. Another thing that we might see is the Navy experimenting with narco submarines for casualty evacuation and supply.
So that's absolutely happening. I'll tell you right now,
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, because I'm in that department,
Okay.
CASIVAC, and the 3D printing. I want to talk about both of
Mm-hmm.
those. And like I said, you stop me anytime you
Yeah.
need to absolutely stop. But 3D printing, unclassified, that I can tell you right now, those autonomous systems are already being built to the point where they're just saying, this is what we need. This is the environment it's going in. You, as an autonomous 3D printing system, create the drone, and it is creating the wildest looking drone. It doesn't look like it should fly. It doesn't look like it should be anything, and
Yeah.
yet it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and gets to the certain location. And then Kazivac, because we're going to have, when China ultimately tries to reunify Taiwan, the U.S. is going to go to the defense of Taiwan. I don't care who the president is. It's not about the president. It's about doing the right thing. And Kazivac is going to be a big thing of that. Multiple people stranded in the ocean,
Yeah.
and we're using Coast Guard. We're using the systems that you talked about. That's just to say that I just want to be able to say, Ryan, you're exactly right. You know exactly what's going on
I
right
appreciate
now,
that.
just because I'm involved in that, and I can speak to these kind of things. This is what is happening, and I don't think a lot of people understand how much effort is going to go into that.
I also see containerization becoming more of a thing.
Okay.
The U.S. has already put, I want to say it was the SM-2 missile inside of a
Hmm.
container. So if we can put the SM-2 missile inside of a shipping container, that means that we can also put something like the precision strike missile uh,
Hmm.
inside of the container as well. And now, one of the ways that we can help defeat China's magazine is allowing things like non-traditional weapon systems on traditional vehicles. Like, I think just recently we fired a HIMARS off the
Yeah.
back of it wasn't a destroyer. I think it was I think it might have been an amphibious assault ship or it might have been a support ship. But we
Yeah, I'd have
fired a
to check with
HIMARS.
my Navy buddy.
Yeah.
Um,
We took a HIMARS launcher, put it on a truck, put that thing on a Navy ship, and told that thing
yep.
to fire. And that might be an option that we have to think about. Can we put a munition on a container ship inside of a shipping container? Or even have these unmanned vehicles, unmanned surface vehicles that have shipping container weapon systems trail alongside of a Navy ship Because right now, this is actually kind of the big thing. Navy ships used to have. Are you familiar with the VLS, the vertical launching system
Yeah, yeah.
for Navy ships? So it used to be that we used to have rail launchers on ships, and the missiles would come up from a magazine. It would go onto the launcher rail. The rail would pivot, then fire the missile. Since the mid 1980s, we had these vertical launch tubes where the top opens up and the missile comes out. The problem is that you can't reload those missiles at sea.
Hmm.
There was once a way to do that. Some destroyers used to have a crane, and so you would lose 3 cells because that's where you're putting the crane. You'd lose 3 cells, but you at least would be able to reload the magazines while at sea. And there might be other ways of doing it, having support ships pull up and have a crane on it, which I can only imagine if the sea's moving, you're trying to put this missile in a
Yeah,
tube while you're doing that,
for
right?
people that I've talked to that have tried to survive on a jetty, just hanging out in the Pacific Ocean, it's not fun.
I can imagine. But I could easily see having these unmanned surface vehicles with containers of weapon systems acting as a semi-attritable loyal wingman.
Hmm.
That's another thing I think we're going to see in 2025. We're going to see more experimentation with the Air Force's loyal wingman program, like the Valkyrie, the X.
Yep.
I can't remember the darn nomenclature of the system, but the Valkyrie, which can fly with as a loyal wingman of a fighter, or kind of break off on its own and do an autonomous mission. We're going to see more experimentation with that. We also might see more adaptation of the Army's M7 rifle, which some troops like, some troops don't like. Uh,
As
but
someone
you know,
who went to combat in 2004, talking about new weapons, and then had the M16 and the
you know.
M4, and it's still there. I would love to see a new infantry weapon be utilized. Obviously.
Well, the question is, regarding the M7, which is the Army's new rifle. The M7 uses a totally different cartridge, 6.8 millimeter,
Okay.
and you lose 10 rounds in the magazine. It's a 20 round capacity weapon system. Now, everybody knows that the majority of ammunition fired is going to be it's in suppressant,
Yep.
suppressive fire, right? So you're losing 10 rounds that you can carry. Those are heavier rounds. And the question is this thing spicy enough to penetrate body armor at 800 meters? And we found like it actually kind of isn't.
Hmm.
Now, we have to start thinking about how are we going to move forward with dealing with enemies who have body armor. It seems like, the 545 caliber is doing okay in Russia, right? I haven't heard really any troops say, I was shooting a dude and his body armor was stopping all the bullets. But that might be because it's mostly an artillery war, right? And if you're
Right.
rolling up on a guy, maybe at ranges where you're actually firing, 545, this intermediate caliber, is a good weapon system for penetrating body armor at that range. But it's always good to do experimentation because the Chinese have body armor. And so now the question is, is this new investment in a new caliber worth it? And I don't have an answer for that. There are some people who say that the weapon system isn't quite there yet, but that's why you do trials, right? That's why you give it to the Rangers first. That's why you give it to the Rockasons. Say, okay, beat the heck out of this thing. Let's see if this thing works. So we're definitely going to see more testing of the M7 rifle, and maybe its adaptation if it does well. I mean, some of the extra spicy rounds are like $12 a round. That's a
Oh wow.
that's that's like more than a 50 cal round.
Yeah.
That's freaking expensive, right? Uh, what else? Covered the Air Force, covered the Navy. One of the things I think we might see in this year is the creation of a Space Force Academy.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, Trump created, so
Mhm.
president President-elect Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, kind of, we don't understand that as a society right now. We haven't seen that in over 100 years now. But as president, Donald Trump created the Space Force. He got a lot of
Yeah.
flack for creating the Space Force, but it was something that was already down the pipeline that was supposed to be created. He just signed it. And I think that the Space Force is a wonderful thing to have enacted. So a Space Force Academy. Are we going to see Army versus Space Force? Go Army, beat Space Force. Is that going to be something?
Maybe I don't know how that works, but I actually wanted to do a video on the logistics of moving the Army football team, because the Army football team is actually managed by the cadets.
Mm-hmm.
What I understand, when you join, when you go to West Point, you have to do a sport, but managing a team counts as doing the sport.
Okay.
So I would love to know how they move all their equipment from one place to another for a game, and then get back in time, put it all away, clean it, maintain it, and get their homework done. That sounds like
we got to get in contact with Shane Gillis, who was very famously on the Army Academy football team for one semester and then quit. But Shane, if you're listening, go on to Ryan's YouTube first, because it's much bigger, and then he'll tell you to come here and we'll talk about it. But I do think you're exactly right. Space Force.
Yeah, we need an academy that will rival MIT in its development of talent when it comes to science. So I think a Space Force Academy would be a crucial step, and it needs to be like, we can't put it in. We have to put it in like a major city or something, because who the heck's going to want to go to Iowa, right? Like, we have to. I mean, look, why did we put
Alabama?
Why did we put the Johnson Space Center in Houston?
Yeah.
Well, where's the talent, right? Probably one of the dumbest things we did as a country was we closed the naval yards in like Brooklyn and San Francisco. I mean, yeah, that land was really useful, but who the heck wants to go live in Wisconsin to build ships, right?
Exactly.
Philadelphia, we closed the Philadelphia shipyard too. Like that. That would actually be. I would like to say it would be nice if we could see more shipyards and dry docks open, but I don't think that'll happen in 2025.
That's 2030, right?
Yeah, I think that might be about it. I can't really think of anything else that we might see.
Well, Ryan, I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you more offline about how much I appreciate this, because I don't want to fluff it up too much. But this has been an awesome episode. Can't wait to get it out. Thank you so much. If you want to take as much time as you have available now, just to tell people where to find you, if they don't already know, and then we'll put everything in the show notes so that they can go directly to your accounts.
Well, you can find me at Ryan McBeth Programming on YouTube, or The Real Ryan McBeth on Instagram, just Ryan McBeth on Twitter, and check out my new book, The Wind Machine, which you can find on Amazon and Audible for Marines who can't read too good.
And me, I'm going to be getting the book for sure. Thank you so much, Ryan. And as I always say to you, to everybody else that's listening, stay safe out there.